I want to get back to today's impeachment. We want to hear now from our constitutional law expert, UNM professor Josh Kastenberg, with an analogy 100 years old.
I think there's an analogy to be made in this. For those people who argue, well, he's gone, it'll be divisive. It's going to be divisive anyway. The country's divided right now. You see this in the House vote. You see this on the streets. Whether or not this would make it more divisive, it's hard to know. But the president is a divisive character. The president's core followers are insistent that the election was a fraud. There's quite a bit of racism in the country still. But if I can draw this analogy, there was an attempt in 1921 to overthrow the Weimar German government, and it was known as the Kapp Putsch. It was a group of conservatives who were unhappy with the liberal government, and they felt the liberal government wasn't doing enough to fight socialism. And so they tried to overthrow the liberal Republican elected government, and they failed. They failed for a number of different reasons. But very few of them were held to account, including the leader. And 18 months later, there was something which is more commonly known than the Kapp Putsch called the Beer Hall Putsch. And that was the very young Adolf Hitler's attempt to overthrow the Bavarian government and spark a revolution throughout Germany. And my point in that is not to compare the United States with Weimar Germany, but my point in that is that the Senate is confronted with a question that if they don't act and make a statement, because they're bowing to the pressures of President Trump's supporters today, then are they putting the country at greater risk tomorrow or 5 years from now or 10 years from now? But if they act decisively now through a statement of an impeachment trial, will they avoid the mistake that the Weimar government made in 1921? And that's the question that's there before them today. I'm not calling people Nazis, but I'm using that as an analogy.
The FBI has warned of armed protests at all 50 state capitals and in D.C. So we asked Kastenberg earlier tonight, what do these people hope to accomplish? The inauguration at this point is set in stone.
Our great Bill of Rights enshrines the right of freedom of expression and freedom of speech. And if the protesters simply want the American public to know that there are millions of them who disagree with the results of the election, and that's their goal, they'll succeed in that goal. If they are trying to disrupt the peaceful transition of government, if they're trying to threaten the transition of government or the population as a whole, what they should know is, unlike the military of the past, and what I mean by that is a passive, apolitical place in America, which is what the military is supposed to be. The United States military has been instructed and fully understands that under our Constitution, Joe Biden will be the president of the United States on the 20th, and they shouldn't expect any support from the military, any of its components, to include the National Guard. I mean, that was the importance of that letter that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Chiefs of Staff signed and sent out to the military yesterday. There's no room within the military for questioning the efficacy and integrity of the vote, and there should be no expectation that the military will do anything but its constitutional duty. Now, given that hard set of facts confronting, the President Trump supporters and groups like the Proud Boys and white supremacist groups like them, there's a lot of chatter among them in cyberspace, threats to disrupt the election, mass demonstrations in state capitol. But law enforcement, the United States military, the Congress of the United States, they don't have the support of any of those institutions in any broad sense other than a person here or a person there. And so it's hard to know what they want. but they're in a scary position now, but they're in a weaker position than they had been before if their goal was to try to affect change.